business are being tracked. I mean, yes, we know that it's all going on with governments and so on, but it's actually being done by private organizations as well. If you walk into a shopping center, a large shopping center pretty much anywhere in the world, you will be tracked. I mean, they will seduce you with the idea of free Wi-Fi, as we've got here in this building. But understand, they're then picking up your MAC address. They know and will track that MAC address. You don't even have to log in anymore. Now, the interesting thing, of course, is, I was talking on the shopping center environment, the idea was, well, we're only tracking MAC addresses, there's no personal information there. But of course, within about 2 minutes of going into a shopping center and tracking your MAC address, I can tell you pretty accurately what your age is, what your gender is, and what your income level is, because I know which shops you go to. And that says an awful lot about you. So, you might think the data is anonymous, you might think it's fairly harmless, but it actually says an awful lot about who you are. And we're seeing more and more of these sorts of environments around the world. And at a business level, tracking, and even at a personal level, tracking your digital trail is becoming a multi-million-dollar business. All of us have a digital doppelganger, an alter ego, who is doing a whole range of things. Some of them are more interesting than others. But understanding what is happening out there, what people are saying about you, is becoming increasingly important. For large enterprises, there's a conversation taking place about your organization that you absolutely have to be involved with. Because if you're not, you're missing out on a whole range of things. So you've got to track all of this information going on in the digital sense. And, customers do things. Consumers, we all get seduced by the free app. And there's a salutary lesson here, If you are not paying for the product, the probability is you are the product. And what I mean by that is if it's a free app, what do you think they're getting? They're collecting information about you, about where you go, what you do, who you are, what you spend money on, a whole range of things. And you're giving that to them free of charge. Because you tick that little box that said, I accept the terms and conditions. The 52 pages that appear on the iTunes terms and conditions, I've never yet come across anyone, even a lawyer, who's actually read all 52 pages on that iPhone screen. We just tick the box. But if you actually read what you've given away on many of these social websites, you would actually just log off and go and hide in a cave for the rest of your life. And it's not just consumers. Organizations are doing the same thing. When you start moving towards web-based applications and Google and all of these sort of things, you are giving away a certain amount of your information. And you're allowing organizations to collect it, to optimize their service offerings, to enable them to be more efficient in serving you. But this is not a free giveaway. This is we've got something from you and we'll give you something back. It's a transaction, even if you're not paying. So we now have this situation where as individuals we're making compromises, businesses are making compromises, we now have complicated the issue by the fact that technology is getting so darn smart. I talk about the idea of thinking machines. We used to talk about things like cognitive computing and artificial intelligence and so on. But thinking machines, robots, systems are making decisions every day of every week, and those decisions are affecting our lives. You might think about robotics as things like Honda's Asimo. They're interesting and they're a test bed. But think about the robots that are out there doing other things. Google Car, and it's not just Google, it's pretty much every automobile manufacturer out there is looking at systems that actually make decisions in your car. Now, okay, you might not feel that comfortable about an entirely automated vehicle, but think about what already exists in the car you're driving today. If you're driving one of the higher-end Mercedes-Benz models, you've got things like collision avoidance in there. If you attempt to drive up the backside of the car in front of you, it will apply the brakes. It doesn't say, please, would you like me to? It just hits the brakes. There's nothing you can do about it. We're now seeing things like lane avoidance or lane tracking. So it will keep you in the lane when you're drowsing and feeling sleepy. It will actually park in a parking space for you pretty much automatically. Cars are doing more and more and more things. And we might feel very uncomfortable about the idea of driving along in a car being driven by the computer. But the reality is we're heading down that direction very quickly. When you have software systems like IBM's Watson or Apple's Siri, you ask Siri a question, it gives you an answer. But have you ever thought about where that answer comes from? Why did they send you down in that direction? Why, when you asked where is the nearest cup of coffee, did they say 1 block down and to the right? And why not 1 block down to the left? Because there was another coffee shop there. Now, there's 3 possibilities here. Maybe it knows from what you've done in the past that you like that brand versus that brand. So it's tracking you, which is a bit uneasy about. Or maybe it's actually just that brand pays them more than this brand. So, it's a commercial decision that you're not aware of. Or, of course, we could be naive and say there is the absolute third option, which is just pure random chance. But as an analyst, you never believe in random chance. So, whatever is happening with these systems, there's a whole lot of decisions being made that are affecting what you do. IBM with Watson is starting to build very, very smart systems. So some of the early trials are being done in terms of diagnosing cancer. So, Watson will actually review all the medical literature, it will take in all the test results, it will come up and advise the doctor about what is the most likely diagnosis, what would be the best treatment, what other information might be required, and so on. So it's becoming a very valuable assistant, a very valuable doctor that doesn't actually get tired, that has perfect recall, that is always available, and so on. Now, it's billed as decision support, but the real problem becomes at what point does decision support become the actual decision? Smart machines, thinking machines are starting to make decisions. And those answers that it's giving start to raise some very interesting questions. Is it legal? Yes, okay. But is it ethical? Is it appropriate? What's the risk versus the reward? Is it reliable? How are people going to feel about that? Now, these aren't technical questions, and you might say, well, that's nothing to do with us. We're the technology people. But you can't cop out just that easily anymore. Technology is not agnostic anymore. You actually have to start taking some responsibility. And although I accept these are difficult questions to answer, these are questions that you actually have to start raising because the rest of the business needs to get involved. Many, many years ago, IT got lumbered, as far as I'm concerned, with the problem of security. And it was lumbered really because no one else in the business wanted to take the difficult decisions about business risk and so on, so it came down to the IT department to do that. Please, 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 do not make the same mistake again. Do not start being the place where the ethical decisions get made because the rest of the business finds them simply too challenging to make. And my experience with CIOs, with business leaders generally, is that these are decisions that they are remarkably unwilling and unable and ill-equipped to make. And yet they're answers that aren't going to be needed in the future. Some of the specifics. If thinking machines are going to make decisions, who's liable when they make the wrong decision? You can't sue a Google car if it actually hits someone because it's not a legal entity. So do you sue Google? Do you sue the car manufacturer? What happens if the patient dies? Well, if the doctor has taken the best available information, which was perhaps coming from Watson, isn't that what he's going to do? Because if not, his professional liability insurance may go through the roof. He may find himself no longer able to practice. So is a Watson decision support actually a Watson decision in de facto sense? Does that mean we're going to see regulatory intervention here? Almost certainly, because ultimately, thinking machines are going to replace knowledge workers. All of those junior legals who are going through and poring over cases, a Watson device like that could do it automatically, much faster, much more reliably. So now we don't need these vast numbers of knowledge workers in the way, so you start having unemployment. Well, governments don't like unemployment, so governments start to get into the situation where maybe we'll tax these machines, or maybe we'll regulate them to actually keep employment levels high and make these machines unattractive, which simply means the jobs go exported somewhere else. We live now in a global environment, and that knowledge work can quite easily move. Will people buy their own? It used to be that technology was very, very expensive. Technology is very, very cheap. You can buy thinking machines, you can buy Watson as a cloud service now. So in the same way as we've seen individual salespeople going out and buying Salesforce.com for themselves, maybe we'll have business people, knowledge workers, buying thinking machine type access for themselves to make themselves smarter, to enhance their career opportunity. And there's a final interesting one. If the machines are going to make all the decisions and robots are going into the production lines to do all the production, maybe we're just facing an endless world of vacations. It's unlikely, the simple fact being that if you go down that route and you get to this point where the system provides everything you are ever going to need, I am always left with that horrible question of, is that system deciding everything that I think I need, or is that system deciding everything that they think I need? Because there's probably going to be a gap between the two of them. So, the last one is somewhat of a hypothetical question. But there is no doubt that we're now living in a world where data is going to be the key thing for most enterprises over the next 3 or 4 years. We're going to see more of it. And there is a good side. There are huge opportunities for business. Digital toothbrushes, everything going digital. But equally, there are huge responsibilities and there are huge risks. And the threats from data are just as big as the opportunities. We live in a world of tension. You know, on the one hand, organizations are collecting data, they're analyzing data, they're using data for competitive advantage. And if you're not going to use it for competitive advantage, you shouldn't be collecting it because you're just wasting money. But at the same time, every time you use that data, you now have to start thinking about what is the reputational risk that I'm running here? You know, what would go wrong? What would happen if I make the wrong decision here? So balancing that reputational risk against the desire for competitive advantage is going to be a tension that is not going to go away and in fact is going to get worse and worse and worse. So the final thought, just because you can doesn't mean you should. But equally bear in mind that just because you don't doesn't mean one of your competitors won't. So welcome to the new world. Thank you.